And with that, we begin today's session with a powerful panel discussion hosted by Ravi Raman, Editorial Director of Martech Vibe, a media industry professional with over 2 decades of content strategy, brand marketing, and team leadership experience. He has launched Middle East editions of iconic media brands like Wired and Bloomberg Business Week. In addition, he has played pivotal leadership roles at Khaleej Times, T-Style Magazine, MSN, India Today, and The Telegraph. He's a TEDx speaker and has been part of several industry forums as a speaker, panel member, and presenter. The title of this panel is Has the Role of the CMO Transformed Forever? What do you think? Has it? Yes or no? Mention your comments in the comments section and I'll let Ravi take over from here. Over to you, Ravi.
Thank you, Sanjay. As we hope, pray, and prepare for things to normalize, technology and innovation will play a huge role. Welcome to this grand CMO panel. Now, we all know that the CMO's role was being transformed even before the pandemic. But the last 2 years has forced CMOs to recast their marketing strategies, reimagine customer experience, and more importantly, reinvent their roles. And we have 4 amazing CMOs to talk about all this and more. Though you know them well, let me quickly introduce them and bring them on the stage. Alison is a CMO of Rand Merchant Bank. She has spent over 20 years in the financial services industry. Then we have Becky, who's a CMO of Tiger Brands, Africa's largest homegrown consumer goods company. She too has over 20 years of marketing experience. We are also joined by Heidi, who's the CMO of Hollard since 2013, before which she was with British Airways and Ipsos Manicor. And then lastly, but not the least, we have Martin, who is the CMO of PepsiCo, Sub-Saharan Africa region. He has held senior positions at BBDO and Unilever. So I guess we have more or less the full panel. We're waiting for one more speaker to join in, I guess. But I want to begin this session by asking each one of you, how has your role changed internally and externally? And Becky, I want to start with you, and then Heidi can come on, and then Martin.
Hi, Ravi, and hi to all of the participants today. It has been a very interesting year and a half of COVID. And I think what I would say is that the role that has changed over that time has, the big thing that everybody's looking for and needs is agility. And the capability to respond to markets that aren't predictable. Here in South Africa, whether it's COVID or even more recently, the different riots and looting that happened, you have to be able to turn things on, turn things off, change your message, and respond to consumers where the predictability isn't the same as it used to be. And I think the role of the CMO has really changed to having to enable more agility into our marketers and into our organizations as well.
Becky, what are your thoughts? Alison, welcome.
Thank you.
Becky, you want to take over?
Ravi, I think you wanted me to follow. So I'm going to add to that agility and talk about basics, because I think from my experience, and those are the only shoes that I can wear on my own, is that I feel like we've had to really reflect on what the simple things about marketing are. Is remember who we're talking to. Remember that we need to speak inside first, more than ever now, as that our internal, we call people who work at Hollard Hollardites. We must speak with them first because they're our most important communications bearers. And then get back to the basics. Check that your brand is, that your manifestos are set, that your purpose is set, that your everybody understands the communication strategy and the essence of what the brand is. And that really for us has been just going back to basics. And at a Martech conference to talk about the simple things to do with brand and marketing rather than the complex, I suppose, is a reflection of the times that we find ourselves in. So that's for me, is back to basics.
I think very true. Back to basics and agility. Martin, what are your mantras?
Thanks, Ravi. I think for me, the thing that simmered to the top of the pot when you asked the question was control the agenda. The minute a business goes into crisis mode, which happened at the beginning of the COVID thing, and it's happened a few times since then, there are a lot of voices that are immediately, at the table. People very quickly form very snappy views about things. I think when businesses go into crisis mode, you can very easily start breaking things. And I think that one of the most crucial roles that a CMO can and should play, certainly I felt that, was to keep the agenda whole, to encourage associates to remain calm, keep their heads up, try and understand what's going on, and then respond, so to the point about agility, but respond thoughtfully rather than reactively or in some sort of panic mode. That's the big story for me, Ravi.
That's truly interesting. Alison, at this point, I want to bring you in. My question to the panel was that how have you seen your role change both internally and externally?
Thanks, Ravi. I think from a CMO perspective, I think we can no longer just be accountable and responsible for marketing impact. So, and it's beyond business impact. We really need to think about societal impact, people impact, and that can't be achieved alone. So I think more than ever in the last year, certainly it's about being able to create deep relationships and partnerships. So, partnering with the CFO, speaking CFO, partnering with human capital and driving the culture and employee agenda, partnering with the CTO around client experience. And I think it's around bringing these capabilities together. I also think as marketers, we've become quite obsessed with, the measurement of what is measurable. So, which has created a sort of a short-term mindset. And I think it's important from a CMO perspective that we really focus on long-term brand building and getting that balance right. So I think those are really, really critical in terms of the CMO agenda going forward.
That's, I think, a very interesting point that you brought out about the impact in the society, and especially given the time that we're in and the situation that we're in. I want to ask you, all of you rather, that what's been one significant change that you did not foresee, and how did you adapt to it? Alison, you want to go first, and then we'll go Becky, Heidi, and Martin.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that we've learned is the future is very unpredictable. And I think we've, as marketers, had to, be resilient and innovate. And it's been about creativity in these times. So, I think none of us saw what was going to transpire. I think certainly, if, there's been such a focus on technology and economic impact during this time, I think what we underestimated was this sort of humanity and this realization, which sounds like an obvious one, but almost putting people first before business. So, what does that mean from an external perspective? It's around truly doing good business and walking the talk, not just showing up. And then from an internal perspective, I think we've certainly, this focus on mental wellness, on employee well-being. It's no longer around, work-life balance, which we've spoken about in the past. It's about this work-life harmony as a concept. So I think this true demonstration of humanity, the human spirit, and people first, I think has really, really come to the fore more than ever, over above the technological advancements, as well as sort of, I think the economic pressures that we all feeling at the moment.
Becky, what do you think? Is it numbers later, people first?
I think it's always a fine balance. And I think it's all about making sure that we're communicating to the people at the right time with the right message. And I think an interesting parallel that's happened over this time is the implementation of the PAPIA Act in South Africa that had to wake us all up from a digital communications perspective, especially in the direct marketing field. So while we're managing COVID, we also ended up having to really work to get our ducks in a row from a consumer protection perspective as well. And one of the things that we have found within our business is that it really has enabled us to start this journey on direct marketing and CRM. And that seems to be what the consumers are looking for these days, which is communication that is more personalized and timely for what's going on around them. And so enabling that agility that I spoke to before, using technology but more for the purpose of answering the needs of what consumers actually need and want right now, not just the general sense of let's market to everybody right now with any blatant message.
Heidi, what about you? What are your thoughts?
So I think that for me, the biggest surprise, or what I didn't expect, is to see the value of the foundations that we've built really come into play now. So I like to think I'm not a control freak, but I'm not sure what marketing mama or papa isn't, because we hold in our hands something so precious and tangible and intangible at the same time. And if you don't love it deeply and hold it close to you like you do a child, you do feel like it can get away from you. And you have so many people working on it, agencies and media agencies and analysts and brand builders, that it can feel like it's away from you. So for me, in the last year and a half, what I've seen is the value of the foundations that we've built, making sure that our culture is articulated, that our brand purpose is articulated, that our brand ingredients are articulated, because it has liberated us to produce still, in this time of absolute separateness, work that is together and relevant, and that resonates with the time that we're in. We had the benefit this morning of sharing some of the stuff with the Gibbs Group, business school MBA group. And you know, when you reflect back on some of the work, you forget actually what you've achieved. I can't believe what we've done in a year and a half, both inside and outside for the brand, with people that we haven't seen and been in a room with for a year and a half. And the only way we've done that is because we've put foundations in place. And I suppose I'm both astounded by it and pleased by it, and encouraging you, really, all the brand builders, to find that balance between science and art, because you need both. And I think that has been truly astonishing for me, is to see what we're capable of, despite the crazies that we're in.
True. I completely agree that there has to be a fine balance between technology, but with personalization and human touch. Martin, I want to bring you in here. What have been your experiences? What's something that you never expected would happen, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, I think that if I think about surprises or unforeseen consequences, the first thing that comes to mind is the realization that plan B is sometimes the thing you've really got to think carefully about. You know, I think marketing people generally are positive. You know, we glass half full people. It's always up. And I think we like that as South Africans too. You know, we have a credible resilience, and we're ready to sort of face the next crisis and come through it and rally the troops, and tomorrow will be better. And then sometimes it isn't. And sometimes you think this is the bottom of the curve, and guys, it's up from here. Surely it can't be worse. Well, then it is worse, because something even worse happens. And the importance of absolutely rigorous consideration of every possibility has been the surprise for me. And that's, maybe you always do that, but I don't really think so. I think we have a bias to up. We have a bias to recovery, and we have a bias towards forward. The first lockdown happened, and our juice business collapsed. And how did that happen? And then it came right, and then suddenly people couldn't go to the beach, and that did all sorts of other strange things. And then we're going great again, and suddenly KZN is on fire, and that changed a whole lot of other things. So, the lesson that you have to consider all the options. What if this does happen? What would we do about that? And how would we react to that? Has given importance to more rigorous consideration of scenarios and appropriate responses in a way that I don't think is something that we were familiar with. So that's been a big learning for me.
That's really interesting. And having a plan B, C, and now we're getting into plan Ds. I wanted to come back to something that all of you touched upon, which was personalization and perhaps customer experience. And I think that's the core essence of marketing now, putting the customers in the center of everything. So I want to hear from all of you two things. One, tell me who owns CX? Where does CX rest in your company? It's open for all. I'm not asking anyone.
I don't mind kicking that off, because I just had a discussion with our CEO about that only a couple of days ago. It was quite an emotional one for me, because when I got to Hollard, CX wasn't part of my portfolio. It had been where I was before, and I was fine. It was nice not to have people phoning me and asking me where their luggage was or what time the next flight was. So I was quite liberated. And then after a time, I was asked to take it on, because a really diverse business with so many distribution channels, and it was a bit of a mush, and it needed some love. And I took it on knowing that it's quite a decentralized business as well, knowing that for the objective was to create a sort of a center of best practice, to create disciples, language, and so on, and make some improvements in our organization with respect to that. We always knew that at some point we would put it back at the place where it belonged, which is the people who touch the customers. And I was quite emotional about it, because it now was my child. It was 3 years. It was 3 years old, and I had to send it away. But in reflecting, because it was my performance review the other day, and in reflecting, because we just actually decentralized it again, I think it was the right thing. So I don't know. It's the same as the question of the website. Where does the website belong? Who should own the website? Who should own CX is another one of those questions. It should, there's a different time. Sometimes it's about timing and where the maturity of the organization is in respect to CX, because it is, again, a science and an art. And I think that it depends on where you are at your life stage. So for us, we needed to have it central to build up the discipline, and then we're ready to put it into the business units. And I can see already the timing was right. So that's my experience of it.
Alison, what about you? Where does CX rest in your organization?
So within our organization, the corporate investment banking side, it sits within the banking division, which is in sort of the frontline facing staff. But it is very much co-creation and collaboration. So I think what we've tried to embed, and we still sort of, I think, building and refining, is I think for any CX, it's got to be built on a strong foundation of principles, and principles need to be built and I think adhered to and lived across the organization. It has been very much, I think, grounded in brand promise, and I think that's where I think marketing plays a pivotal role in terms of that strategic intention and ensuring that's lived through the experience and the various touch points. But it has to have that organizational buy-in. And within our organization, the importance of it also needs to be elevated in terms of it has to be something that has got, buy-in from, the highest level in terms of...
I completely agree. Brand promise is something that the organization promises. So it needs to rest with everybody. Becky, what are your thoughts?
So I work in an organization that is quite... disparate to some extent. We have lots of divisions, and consequently, though, a lot of our consumers are the same because they're shopping the same supermarket. And so there's both the consumer experience that we need to speak to, as well as the customer experience, being those that are buying from us versus our consumers are buying more from those supermarkets. So it's a two-tiered system where today that experience probably sits too separate versus looking at it as one ecosystem. So I'd say that we're quite nascent in this space in ensuring a consistent experience. But the work that we're doing from a tech perspective in particular is seeing how we can bring it better together for the future.
All right. Martin, we have a few seconds left.
I'll be quick. I think, look, it's tried to say it's all of our job, I guess. But the reality is that in practice, transactionally, it's going to sit somewhere on the demand side of the organization, depending on how you arranged. We have a similar challenge to the way Becky describes it. What I would add, though, is that I think that evangelizing it and championing it does need to come from the CMO's office. And that's certainly been my experience, that even if transactionally it isn't mine, although every month there seems to be more so, the song has got to be sung from the center, and someone has to repeat these things and keep the businesses focused on it and champion it in a motivated and persuasive way. And I think that has to come.
Very true. Well said. And I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Alison, Becky, Heidi, Martin, for this inspiring session. And a big thank you for the hundreds of delegates who've joined in. Please enjoy the rest of the sessions. Over to you, Sanjay.